It was the summer of 1985. Coca-Cola, the most iconic brand in the world, made a bold move. They changed their legendary formula. But what happened next shocked the business world. Protests erupted. Bottles were poured down drains. People hoarded the old version like gold. What was supposed to be a marketing triumph turned into a historic disaster. This is the story of how Coca-Cola, the symbol of American pride, nearly destroyed its empire overnight, and how it clawed its way back with one of the greatest comebacks in business history. By the early 1980s, Coca-Cola wasn't just a drink, it was America in a bottle. You could find it in vending machines, gas stations, diners, and dinner tables in over 150 countries. It was a drink of soldiers in war, children on summer days, and presidents in the Oval Office. The red and white logo was more recognized than the Christian cross. That's how big it was. In 1984 alone, Coca-Cola generated over $7.6 billion in revenue, and its product was consumed over 70 million times a day. For almost a century, it had gone virtually unchallenged. People didn't just love Coke, they trusted it. But deep within the boardrooms of Atlanta, Georgia, the company was uneasy. A new generation wasn't as loyal. Young people weren't picking Coke by default. And worst of all, Pepsi was getting dangerously close. Coca-Cola's leadership wasn't just thinking about quarterly profits. They were thinking about legacy, about fear, about what would happen if they became the next forgotten empire. And so, behind closed doors, they began a journey that would threaten to unravel the very thing that had built Coca-Cola's empire in the first place: its taste. If Coca-Cola was the king, Pepsi was the rebellious prince clawing at the throne. For decades, Pepsi had played second fiddle in the cola wars. But by the late 1970s and early 1980s, it wasn't just catching up, it was outmaneuvering. The key? A psychological marketing masterstroke known as the Pepsi Challenge. Launched in malls and public events across America, the Pepsi Challenge was brutally simple. 2 cups, 1 Coke, 1 Pepsi, unlabeled. Participants took a sip of each and chose their favorite. Time and again, people picked Pepsi.
Pepsi.
Pepsi. Pepsi.
I like Pepsi a lot better.
Pepsi tastes better.
Taste, that's the real thing. So take the Pepsi challenge and let your taste decide.
The results were clear and terrifying for Coca-Cola executives. Pepsi's sweeter formula appealed to younger palates and the rising MTV generation. The company doubled down with aggressive ads featuring Michael Jackson, youth culture, and slogans like "the choice of a new generation." And it was working. In supermarkets across the US, Pepsi began outselling Coca-Cola for the first time. Even worse, internal polling showed that Coke's market share was slowly eroding. The unthinkable was happening. The Titan was trembling. Coca-Cola's response wasn't just panic, it was existential. They had seen what happened to other giants who failed to adapt. Kodak, IBM, General Motors. Could they become the next dinosaur in a world of fast-evolving consumer tastes? One internal Coca-Cola memo even declared, "We are not losing market share to a superior product. We are losing it to a perception." That perception, that Pepsi was cooler, sweeter, fresher, was a dagger to Coca-Cola's brand identity. And the leadership believed they had only one option: change the formula, beat Pepsi at its own game. But there was a catch. The original Coke formula had been virtually untouched since 1886. It was sacred, a national treasure. To tamper with it would be to tamper with American tradition itself. And yet the pressure was immense. In their minds, it was evolve or die. So in total secrecy, a team of chemists, marketers, and executives began crafting a new version of Coca-Cola, one that was sweeter, smoother, and scientifically designed to outperform Pepsi in taste tests. They called it Project Kansas. And soon, the most controversial beverage in history would be born. Inside Coca-Cola's Atlanta headquarters, a storm was brewing, quiet, calculated, and wrapped in absolute secrecy. Under the code name Project Kansas, a nod to a 1970s Time magazine article that called Coca-Cola the sublimated essence of all America, executives launched a daring mission: redesign the most famous flavor on Earth. Taste scientists, known internally as flavor chemists, were called in. Their task: make a Coke that could beat Pepsi in blind taste tests. Over 190 different variations were developed, tested, and revised, and eventually, they found it. A smoother, sweeter formula with a cleaner finish. It wasn't wildly different, but it was enough. In blind tests, it consistently beat Pepsi. More importantly, it beat the original Coca-Cola too. That was the green light the company had been waiting for. Executives felt they had cracked the code. They believed they had created a version of Coke that could win the youth market and silence the Pepsi threat. But they didn't just want to release this new drink, they wanted to replace the original completely. Erase it, as if it had never existed. That decision would become the turning point. Because while their market research seemed bulletproof, more than 200,000 taste tests, a majority preferring the new formula, there was one massive blind spot. They tested the tongue, not the heart. What no spreadsheet or data set could measure was the emotional connection people had to the original Coke. For millions, it wasn't just a flavor, it was a memory, a feeling, a symbol of family, childhood, national identity. In short, Coke was comfort in a can. And yet, in April 1985, without warning, the old formula disappeared from store shelves. Coca-Cola executives held a press conference. They smiled. They called it a moment of renewal. They unveiled the sleek new can. The name? New Coke. The reaction? They were about to find out that messing with tradition, even with the best intentions, can awaken something far more powerful than competition: outrage.
It's bottlers of video pep rally in the War of the Colas.
So let's let her rip. Let's land on the beaches and go all the way.
It's a kick, it's a hit, it's a Coke.
On April 23, 1985, Coca-Cola made its biggest announcement in nearly a century. At a press conference in New York City, CEO Roberto Goizueta stepped to the podium and declared, "We have a new taste and a new Coke." The company poured millions into advertising, pushing the message that new Coke was smoother, better, fresher. TV spots featured smiling young people. Taste testers grinned and nodded. Everything looked like a masterstroke in modern branding, until it wasn't. Within 24 hours, the phone lines at Coca-Cola headquarters were jammed. Thousands of calls, most of them furious. People weren't just disappointed, they were outraged. Radio shows buzzed with angry callers. Local stores were swamped by panicked customers asking if they had any old Coke left in stock. Some people even hoarded cases, treating them like priceless artifacts. And then came the protests. In Seattle, a man founded a group called Old Cola Drinkers of America. In San Antonio, protesters marched with signs reading, "We want the real thing." In Mississippi, Coca-Cola was boycotted entirely. The backlash crossed party lines, age groups, and cultures. Liberals, conservatives, boomers, and Gen Xers. Everyone seemed to agree. New Coke was a betrayal. Even psychologists weighed in, calling it a textbook example of brand mismanagement. People hadn't been asked. They'd been told. Their memories and emotional attachments had been quietly erased, replaced by a marketing experiment. Coca-Cola, the brand that once united people in wartime and peacetime alike, now found itself the villain in its own story. By May, just weeks after the launch, Coca-Cola's own internal polling showed a disaster in the making. 8,000 plus calls a day to customer service, 85% negative. Sales in some cities dropped by double digits. Public sentiment turned hostile. The media didn't help. Late-night hosts mocked the decision. Comedians dubbed it the marketing blunder of the century. Even Fidel Castro chimed in, calling it a sign of American capitalist decay. Internally, panic set in. Executives couldn't believe it. They had tested the product. It won. Statistically, it should have been a success. But they were learning the hard truth. You can't measure nostalgia. And yet, something even more shocking was coming. A twist no one expected. Because this disaster would turn into one of the most brilliant comebacks in business history. In the months following the launch of New Coke, Coca-Cola executives weren't just dealing with a failing product. They were facing something much deeper, a nationwide identity crisis. To millions of Americans, Coca-Cola wasn't just a soft drink. It was America itself. It was soldiers drinking Coke on the front lines of World War II. It was Norman Rockwell paintings, baseball games, childhood memories, Sunday picnics. And then, just like that, it was gone. The decision to erase the original formula, not sell it alongside, not label it as Coke Classic, but replace it entirely, felt like a cultural betrayal. People didn't feel like consumers anymore. They felt like victims. A columnist for the New York Times wrote, "Changing Coca-Cola is like rewriting the Bible." In focus groups, customers didn't just express confusion. They expressed grief. Some were even moved to tears. Others accused Coca-Cola of selling out, abandoning its heritage, caving to market pressure. One woman in Chicago told a local reporter, "Coca-Cola was always there. And now I feel like part of my life is missing." Even former competitors were stunned. Pepsi's executives were so shocked by Coca-Cola's decision that they initially suspected it was some kind of elaborate bluff. When it wasn't, Pepsi celebrated with a full-page ad that read, "After 87 years of going at it, Coke just gave up." But it wasn't just Pepsi capitalizing on the chaos. Store brand colas saw a surge. Regional soda companies returned. And the mythos of Old Coke only grew stronger. People began writing letters by the thousands. More than 40,000 handwritten notes were sent to Coca-Cola's headquarters, many of them begging for the original formula to return. Some even mailed unopened bottles of new Coke back in protest. And yet, amid all this chaos, something strange began to happen. People were talking about Coca-Cola more than ever. The controversy had taken on a life of its own. News programs, talk shows, newspapers, everyone was covering it. Public frustration became public obsession. And slowly, the leadership at Coca-Cola began to realize something. They hadn't destroyed the brand. They had accidentally rekindled the love for it. By removing it, they had reminded people how deeply it was embedded in their lives. The pain, the anger, the loss. It all stemmed from something powerful: attachment, loyalty, identity. The emotional backlash wasn't a sign of failure. It was proof of just how much Coca-Cola meant to the world. And now the only question was, would they bring it back? On July 11, 1985, just 79 days after launching New Coke, Coca-Cola made an announcement that would go down in business history. The press conference was packed, cameras rolled, the mood was tense. And then Coca-Cola President Donald Keogh stepped up and said the words Americans had been waiting to hear: "We're bringing it back." The original Coca-Cola, unchanged, unfiltered, unbroken, was returning to store shelves. It would be branded as Coca-Cola Classic. And in that moment, a corporate blunder transformed into a marketing miracle. The response was immediate. Supermarkets couldn't stock Coca-Cola Classic fast enough. Shelves were cleared out within hours. Customers lined up. Bottlers celebrated. The media called it the second coming of Coke. And most astonishing of all, sales surged. Within weeks, Coca-Cola Classic was outselling both New Coke and Pepsi. By the end of the year, Coca-Cola regained its position as the #1 soft drink in America. Internally, Coca-Cola's executives were stunned and relieved. What had started as a crisis had become a case study in emotional branding, humility, and consumer loyalty. And while many at the company denied it at the time, some would later admit what the public had long suspected. They learned more from the failure than they ever could have from success. New Coke didn't just test taste, it tested trust. And when Coca-Cola admitted its mistake and listened to its customers, something extraordinary happened. That trust wasn't just restored, it was strengthened. To this day, marketing professors debate whether the New Coke debacle was a planned stunt. It wasn't. Coca-Cola genuinely believed they were making the right move. But what they learned instead was priceless. People don't always want new. They want what they know, what they love, what feels like home. And by bringing Coca-Cola Classic back, the company didn't just fix a mistake, they reignited a legacy, one that would carry the brand through the 1990s, the 2000s, and into the 21st century. Coca-Cola Classic became more than a drink. It became a symbol of resilience, and the world took notice. The Coca-Cola scandal of 1985 wasn't just a corporate blunder. It became a business legend, taught in MBA classrooms, cited in marketing books, and whispered as a cautionary tale in boardrooms. But beneath the drama, the outrage, and the redemption lies something far more valuable: a masterclass in branding, psychology, and consumer behavior. Here are the key lessons every entrepreneur and business builder should take from the new Coke story. 1. Data doesn't tell the whole story. Coca-Cola's decision was based on hard data. Over 200,000 taste tests. Statistically, new Coke should have succeeded, but numbers can't measure emotion. People don't make decisions based solely on logic. They're driven by memory, nostalgia, identity. Coke forgot that it wasn't just a product. It was a ritual, a feeling, a symbol. They tested the tongue, but they didn't test the heart. 2. Never underestimate brand. Loyalty consumers will tolerate mistakes, but they won't tolerate being ignored. Coca-Cola made a unilateral decision and left its customers out of the conversation. In today's world of social media and instant feedback, that kind of top-down approach can spark a firestorm even faster. Loyalty isn't just built with a great product, it's built with respect and relationship. 3. Admit mistakes and fix them fast. One of the most remarkable parts of this story? Coca-Cola admitted they were wrong, publicly, boldly. They reversed course in under 3 months. That kind of humility and speed saved the brand. In business, it's not about never failing. It's about how fast you recover when you do. Sometimes, the mistake is the marketing. Ironically, the new Coke disaster reminded people how much they loved the original. It created scarcity, nostalgia, and a nationwide conversation. Coca-Cola Classic came back stronger than ever. Would it have seen such success without the controversy? Maybe. But the lesson is clear. Emotional connection is more powerful than any ad campaign. 5. Your brand is bigger than your product. Coca-Cola thought they were selling a better taste. But what they were really selling was trust, identity, and comfort. Entrepreneurs often obsess over product improvements, new features, new formulas, new logos. But sometimes, the thing your customers love most isn't something you can improve. It's something you have to protect. Coca-Cola survived one of the greatest marketing blunders of all time. Not because of luck, but because of how deeply people cared. And that's the final truth. If your customers love your brand, truly love it, then even your worst mistake can become your greatest comeback. That's not just good business, that's legacy.